been there. Was it the Hyatt in Sydney? It was very, very nice.
Yeah, I think it's Sussex Street in Sydney, and beautiful place. And I remember it well because from that, you were actually the person that challenged me to look at global outsourcing. And as a result, I've hired multiple virtual assistants, and now I'm a massive advocate as well. So it was a very powerful conversation.
I'm slowly getting at you. I've got Jimmy. I've got you now. I've got Gosen and P. So I'll take down this fitness industry into just the powers that be. Anyway, it is my absolute pleasure to be with you all. I'm going to be talking a lot about media and video and podcasts today and a lot of that stuff. I thought I better get set up and actually bring the goods here. So I'm coming to you from my podcast studio. We're on the whole new rig and mic, and hopefully you can all hear me crystal clear. So Dan, I'll take it that you can hear me. We have been communicating, but hopefully coming through well for
Very
everyone.
nice, mate. Very nice. Very jealous. It's
awesome.
Quite the setup.
So there's a bit of a story to go with this presentation, and I'll frame it up before I do share my screen with it. This is actually a complete remake. I actually had a whole presentation prepared on Tuesday that I was going to deliver, and through a series of events, I decided to completely change it because I felt there was something much more important to deliver in the media side of things that will help you all get phenomenally more results from it. So essentially we had a couple of people come to us and they'd just been going through some very real challenges, and it was very obvious to me what their content was missing. So I've built a whole presentation around that today, which I think will help everyone that is here understand this game in a very, very different way. So if you just bear with me momentarily, I'm just gonna take over and share my screen. Size it up a bit nicer, eh? Now, can I just grab the chat as well? Apologies, Zoom is still a little bit clunky in this area, but hopefully slides are coming through and I can also see the chat. So we'll post monitor that as we go through from here, but very, very excited to bring this one across to you all and be one of the speakers that is here for today. So I always like to kind of start with a bit of a question, and I always like to get a bit of a feel of the people that are on here right now. How many of you are actually making content already? And when I say making content, who's making videos? Who's making podcasts? Who's writing emails? Who's doing social media? And chuck it in the chat. Give me a yes, because I won't be able to see you all from a share screen, but I'd love to just open this up. Wow, there's a lot of you. This presentation is going to be very, very important to all of you there. It's interesting that I was just listening to Tarek talk with Daniel there about how things have really changed or evolved in here. Now, I was well ahead of my time a few years ago with seeing that media was going to play a much bigger role. When I say media, I mean content. But when I saw it was going to be a bigger role, I never could have expected that COVID was going to happen, and has absolutely exploded. So this year alone, we are seeing some of our brands and podcasts and video producers, like their businesses have doubled this year because they were set up right to take on a wave we didn't know was coming. And I will really share a lot of the insights and things that have come from it, but it looks like quite a lot of you in here make content, which is good. Now, whenever I do a presentation, I've done quite a few in more recent times, it is undoubtable that the wrong questions start to get asked. And what do I mean by the wrong questions? This is the stuff I don't want you to ask me at the start of this presentation, but you are welcome to ask me at the end or after. And they are, what microphone or camera do you use? And what is the latest social media hack? And the reason I have put this slide here is because they seem to be two topics that are a heavy, heavy distraction for many content matters. And they're just a huge waste of your time. I cannot emphasize this enough. You being successful with content or video or podcasts or any of this stuff does not depend on what camera you have or what microphone you have. And it does not depend on if you post on Instagram at 4 o'clock or 4:15. That stuff is absolute rubbish and will not set you up for the long game. Now, we look after some absolutely massive brands. I kid you not, some of the biggest podcasts in the world, some of the biggest YouTube channels in the world, and a lot of them, to my laugh and irony, use the cheapest, dirtiest equipment you've ever seen from 5 years ago, and they absolutely crush it. And it's just so, so important that I can get through to you on that point. It's not the equipment that makes the difference here. And the reason for that is none of that equipment actually matters if your content is trash. And sadly, like a lot of people out there, and I'm going to even say there's probably some of you are making content right now, you think you're making above average content when really you're just contributing to the noise. Majority of the content out there right now doesn't get results and doesn't perform because it is just trash. And I really want to help you all break through that. Now, to this point, I said there was a little bit of a story to go with this. Now, it tends to be, there's 2 phone calls I get when people want to come and work with Valher Media. Phone call number 1 is someone that hasn't started making content at all. And they're like, Charlie, I recognize this is a lot harder than I thought it would be or could be. And I want to come and work with you before we start so we make sure we do this right and we don't waste a whole bunch of time. The other 50% are people that have been making content, videos, podcasts, doing social media, and they've been doing it for about 12 months or so. And they're like, hang on, the return on investment here is terrible. We're clearly wasting our time and spinning our wheels. We don't want to do this anymore. There's clearly something we don't understand. And it's this group of people that I want you not to be. This is the phone call I had on, it was actually late Tuesday evening and into Wednesday. It started where someone had been spending an absolute fortune on production and ads and trying to make this whole content video thing work and had been ballistically failing. I mean, it was an absolutely diabolical effort where they wasted about $100,000 in the last 12 months on trying to make this content marketing model work. And it just didn't happen at all. And I don't want you guys to be a part of that group. So what we're going to be working on today, and what I'm going to really want to highlight from here, is I want to teach you the principles of creating great content. And here's the caveat, and it should actually be reversed, that makes people want to buy from you. I'm talking about making the content that will produce you leads and sales, not likes, shares, and followers, because that stuff will not pay the bills. So are you guys with me? Am I crystal clear on what we're going to be talking about today and how we're going to deliver it?
Yes.
Excellent. Someone said, yes, I'll take that. I always like to make sure. Guys, let's keep it interactive. I like to work with and keep it, I suppose, a bit more vocal. So in the chat, don't be shy. If you want to pop on and ask a question, we'll go through that. My presentation, I'm hoping, will go for about 40 minutes. And then I'm hoping I might go a touch longer depending on how excited I get in my stories. But after that, I'm hoping some of you that are making content and not getting the results, because I'm guaranteeing there'll be some of you on here, I want you to put your hand up and say, Charlie, let's do some examples and go through some stuff and let's fix your content and these principles applied to it on this call. And I think it'd be really powerful. So if you're someone that would love a bit of a hand, I'll literally help direct you on where your content should be going in your video and stuff throughout here. So look forward to that bit at the end. But before we get into that, why should you even listen to me at all? Like, I mean, Dan did give me a pretty good intro. I would listen to me on that based alone if you're in his group. But has this guy got any runs on the board, or is he one of those charlatans that sits on Facebook making ads pretending he's actually done stuff, but really has never had a successful business in his life? Definitely not. So at the moment at Valher Media, we currently manage over 1 million views and downloads per week. My company works behind the scenes on a lot of huge shows that you would know that I just cannot mention because of NDAs. But a lot of the chart toppers in the podcasting world, we have been a part of. And then a lot of very, very big YouTube channels we work behind on their stuff as well. To go on top of that, since I've been around doing this content stuff, we've spent more than 5 million on ads testing this stuff. So really, really looking to understand. You've got to ask yourself, I'm very much a means outcome type of guy. If you haven't gauged that already, I'm very much on like, how do we make this work? I wouldn't have put 5 mil into this if I couldn't see how we could actually turn that into relevant revenue, profit, and sales for a business. So I don't put that number in there to boast. I put it in there to really highlight that it wouldn't make sense to spend that money on ads if it wasn't doing something for the businesses we work with. It really wouldn't make any of that sense. So this is why I've got the runs on the board. We've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I think there's a lot we can definitely show you in here. One of the questions I commonly get asked is it too late to start content marketing? Like, has it become a saturated space? Like, is there not podcasts and videos and YouTube channels in all this stuff that's already covered? And the answer I would absolutely say is while it's never been easier to make content, there's also been never a better time to actually start going harder on your content. And I really want to emphasize this, that in this year alone, we are seeing astronomically more people consuming content online. And I think this trend is here to stay. I think too many people have been forced to adapt and change their behavioral ways in this year. And I'm pretty certain this is here to stay. And I'll give you a couple of examples. My wife's parents are not computer savvy at all. And since this pandemic, it's quite hilarious, is they're doing Zoom meetings. Like they're in their 60s. I mean, my wife has to go over there and set up the computer and put the link on to make it all work. But it's like they're doing it. They're absolutely doing it. And I just find that this is the sign of like true adoption, is when people that had completely resisted the technology are now being forced to adapt. So I think more and more people are going through that. So today, we're going to go through these 5 principles. Now, these principles, it doesn't matter if you're a podcaster, a video creator, a blogger, or making micro stuff on social media. If you avoid or disobey these 5 principles, you're not going to have a good time. You're going to spin your wheels. You're going to spend a whole bunch of money on all this crap. And you're going to come back to me at some point and go, oh, I knew better now because you told me and I wish I did it. And that's what I want to help you with today. Now, these principles are also in a certain order for a reason. You have to follow these principles in order. And while they are a principle, they are also a process. So let's dig into it. Let's start working through these things. And then I'm very eager to work with you guys on actually helping you with your content in general. So principle number 1, match the strategy with the goal. And this sounds like a really obvious one, but time and time again, and even into this week, people seem to really, really forget this one. So what do I mean by that? I want you to imagine, and I'm using a fitness example here because we want to make this very, very relevant to something that everyone can understand. I want you to imagine you've got to lose 10 kilos. You want to lose 10 kilos. There's this thing you've gotten to a point in your life and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you go, right, I want to lose 10 kilos. Now, could you get some results towards this goal by just like going to the gym? Maybe you just go and you say like, I'm going to like, maybe I'll do a bit of trainer. Maybe I'll lift some weights. Maybe I'll do a class here and here. Could you get a few results? You definitely can. And that's kind of how most people treat their content. But wouldn't it be far quicker and more effective to maybe get a weight loss plan, to maybe like actually do the specific things that would result in weight loss? So maybe you'll hire a personal trainer who works in weight loss and gives you a program. Maybe you start eating a diet specific to weight loss. You can see that if you start to align the actual activities to the goal, it can work far better. And that's what most people are missing when it comes to their content, is they're not really clear, or they have a goal in mind, but they haven't necessarily aligned their activities to match that. And in turn, they end up wasting a heap of time. Now, many are just optimizing for likes and followers instead of their goal. So what I've done here is I've put a list together of 4 goals. If you are a content maker, you need to pick one of these. Every content maker out there, whether it's podcasts or videos, ultimately you are doing it for one of these reasons. And someone generally says they're not, and then they'll say something and then they'll realize it comes into one of these points. So I'll go through these one by one and then we'll make it clear. So you might really make content because you want to get clients. You want to get more leads and sales coming to your business. Personally, that's why I make content. I don't make content for any other reason. It's very much a marketing and sales vehicle for my business. The second one here is because you want to keep clients or offer a post-service one. Now, this is a really good one, right? I'll give you some examples. One of the shows we have worked with is the Max's company. And they have a podcast called The Challenge. So Max's protein and supplements, you may have heard of them. Paul Kirkman is a friend of mine. We worked with them because they run a 30-day challenge, or I think it might be 60 days now, or whichever challenge they do. And when people do that challenge, they actually have a whole podcast and video series, which is just designed to help people complete that challenge, which in turn helps them sell a lot more products. Another really good one I've come across is my physio and chiro. If you ever go there with an injury, he's got a whole podcast dedicated to your injury. So if you've done your sciatica, he's made like a little series on sciatica just to make sure you complete your treatment. It's really, really interesting and a fascinating way you can approach content. And for some people, they should be making their content just to keep their clients. It's a really good strategy for a lot of people. The next one on the list here is to build your network and authority. Now, if you're someone who wants to be seen as a leader in your space, perhaps you're someone who wants to be doing more speaking at conferences and events, then this is very viable as a strategy for you. And some really good examples of this is if I had a podcast and I had guests like Oprah and Richard Branson on there, I really went for those big names. By association, I would be able to definitely build up some brand perception and perhaps, do some authoring or book circuits or speaking circuits and things like that. And that's a very, very viable strategy. It can work for some people. And then the last one is fun. Honestly, some people really get into this podcasting or video thing or YouTube channel for fun. There's a whole bunch of hobbyists out there. Just like I enjoy cycling and playing golf, there are people out there that do content for fun. Now, for everyone who's making content or thinking about making content on here, I want you to always have one of these as your primary goal. Now, I'm not saying you can't get some secondary benefit. You might get some clients and have some fun, but you're going to optimize your whole content strategy to achieve one of these really, really well. And any secondary is just a nice to have. So pick one goal. Principle number 2, one specific audience. And I have a mentor and he says this all the time. And I love this as a saying, especially as Australians, because we don't pronounce it this way. But he always says in his very thick American accent that niche rhymes with rich for a reason. They did that on purpose. They absolutely sat there and said, we need to make it like this so people understand they need to pick a niche if they want to be rich. And while it's funny because we, of course, say niche in Australia, we would never say niche, or some people maybe. But I still hold this principle to be true. And the fact we don't pronounce it in this way makes it really easy to remember because it kind of doesn't rhyme. So when you're looking at making content, the broader you go with your content, the harder it is to succeed. And ultimately, the worse it is. And I want to use another example here. So I want you to imagine you're teaching a fitness class. And I want you to work with me here. So I'm going to pretend I'm at a gym I used to train at. It was a Fitness First. And they had these classes you could go and do. There's like this big hall where you could go in and had wooden floors and equipment and stuff around there. And for some reason, the trainers always had this like podium, right? I don't know why, but it was like this boxed podium of like black marine carpet. And when they ran a class, that's just what the trainers were always on. So when you imagine you're coming in and you're going to teach this class, you're like, yep, I'm nailing. I'm a trainer at this gym. I'm going to teach this. So you're up there in your little short shorts, making sure people know you got the goods. Give a bit of flex, make sure, people can see what's going on. And as people start coming into this class, the first people that come in are a couple of really big bodybuilders. It's 2 guys and they're 110 kilos each, 6% body fat, and they come up and they set themselves in the corner. And the next person that comes in is a single mum who's just trying to deal with her diabetes, right? And then the next person that comes in is a girl who wants to look good in a bikini this summer. She just wants to lose some weight. And before you know it, you're starting to have a look at this class that's in front of you and you realize that by the diversity of these people, like, what are you actually going to say to them or do to run an effective class? Because the bodybuilders, right, they want a program that's all about like 5x5s. They're really looking to put some mass on and attack their content attack this class from like, how can they put on size? The chick who wants to look good in a bikini, she's really looking for strategies about how do I be lean and lose weight? And then the mum, well, she's just trying to very much navigate her diabetes. So as an instructor of this class, you've made it really, really difficult to actually design anything useful. This whole class will be no one's best option. And in turn, do you know what happens? They never come to this class again. They're like, this class was crap. So what you want to do when it comes to content is make sure that when you are teaching that class, you're creating an environment where you can communicate effectively. You're really trying to create this class for one group of people. And when you do that, you create something truly special that they want to actually engage in, and they'll get far better results. Far, far better results. Now, when it comes to content, this is the interesting thing. If anyone was running classes in person and they could see the people in their class going, well, this is just crap, I'm not coming back, they'd probably change their strategy pretty quick. But because when we're producing content and we're creating content, there's no one out there that we're looking at and we don't get that feedback loop. So what actually happens is people just unsubscribe. They just don't view it. They just skip it. They don't engage, and you never get to see that you're actually ruining this class. You've got a whole bunch of class ruiners out there and we're stopping people from getting the result there. So my kind of view here, and I just put this line in before, we've moved into this era, especially this post-COVID era, where I think everyone's goal should be to become micro-famous. Your goal shouldn't be to build a giant audience. It should to be build an audience so small that they are so creeped out by how well you can serve them. That they literally watch your content, consume your stuff and like go, this guy's following me or this girl's following me. How could they possibly know that? That's the level we want to go to from there. And the natural question becomes of this, how niche should I be? So I've developed a bit of a framework here. And this is something I think everyone can work through pretty conversely that will really help them get started with this program. Honestly, I could have done a whole presentation on just picking a niche. We don't have time for that today, but I think these things will really, really help you. And I'll go through them quickly here. So one is demographics. And I think this is a pretty obvious one, is like, how old are they? Relationship status, things like that make a huge difference. It might be, are they married or single? Geography is another one that I really like. So is it for people that are in Australia? Or is it for people in the US? Or is it for English speaking countries? Or maybe you're someone that has a second language skill that you can really take advantage of here. Now, the last two on this list are probably the ones that I think are the most important. In every market, there is an experience level gap. So for example, we use bodybuilders as the example for this, is there is within bodybuilding, beginners, intermediates, and advanced. And they all want very, very different content, and speaking to them all as one unit is a very big mistake. Beginner bodybuilders need very different information and very different help and want to see very different things than someone who's competing at a professional level. So to try and make content for all levels is just silly and naive. And I would really get people to avoid that. So when you think about this, is especially in your business, when you look at who are your perfect customers and who are in your market, what experience level of that is a great one. And then lastly, and this is my favorite one, I think more people should think about niching, not from demographics and geographics, but what outcome are they trying to achieve? What do they actually want? What outcome as a business do you provide for someone when you come and work with them? Is it weight loss? Is it mass gain for bodybuilding? Is it you help them become better cyclists or marketers or whatever it is from there? Understanding those outcomes will really play a huge difference from there. And once you've nailed this stuff out, the other side of it is that you must understand these things about your audience. The device they use. So really, really funny one from here. My nan, who's 94, right? So 94-year-old in COVID, okay? She's discovering the internet, which is interesting. But she can't use a phone because she can't read the screen. It's too small. But she's 94, give her a break. So for her, if you really wanted to target my nan, right, you'd have to target desktops in large font, no sidebars. And conversely, if you look at a generation that's coming up through now, well, they spend a lot more time on things like Instagram and YouTube, right? They're the much more younger generations. And if you were going to lean into boomers, you would probably want to head towards more Facebook. And if you wanted to lean into professionals, you may lean into LinkedIn differently. So the device they use and the platforms they use plays a big role when you layer it from niche in understanding what content you're going to make and how you're going to go this from there. The next component is what content they already consume. And this is a really powerful one. If you don't know who's in your niche and what's already out there, you should really spend some time on it. My last one here is how they buy. So I mentioned this earlier today, but I'll mention it again from here. In some niches, they're very messenger friendly. And in some niches, they're very email friendly. And understanding that within your market is a huge advantage. For me, I sell a lot on email. Email is where I make a lot of sales. A lot of the people we work with don't communicate well on Messenger. Inversely, someone you guys mentioned before, Jimmy McDonald, they don't do email marketing in some regards because Messenger is just so effective for them. So it's really important to understand your market in the perspective of that, so you know very, very clearly how you can win with content itself. And to put it bluntly, if you don't have a niche yet, get one. Just plain and simple. Like there's no resistance there. It's a really important part of understanding these. So we've covered my first two principles, and we can see I've just got a question here, and I'll make sure I read from Alan. I've just realized that some of my members who have trained for years elsewhere are still beginners in my methods. Absolutely. Really good insight there. Sometimes we have the curse of knowledge, guys. So when we've been doing something for a long time, we forget that some people don't know things. And we operate with a level of integrity where it's like, we just assume like, I mean, you guys all know how to put a Sigma lens on a 3/4 A6400 here, don't you? I mean, you wouldn't possibly know that the camera I'm using, you all know that needs that, right? Of course not, because like this is where we spend a heap of time. So that curse of knowledge can be a really, really big dangerous thing here. Now, earlier in the week, I've already mentioned this one as well, is that I had a call with someone who was making content and just doing a dismal job of it. This one I'm going into now, unique value-driven content. I literally built this out just for them. So Josh, you asked a really good question. Can I just ask that question at the later on, because we're going to cover that, and I'll use you as an example if you would like. So we'll come back around on that, Josh. That's a really good question about targeting people that are a little bit older, because there's some really interesting and great ways to do it. So what we're going to cover here is we're going to talk about like the actual content you should be making now. So if you followed principle 1 and principle 2 here, principle 1 is you know what outcome you're going for, right? You're not just having fun if you want to get sales, and you're not trying to get sales if really you want to look after your clients. You're very clear on your goal. In part 2 here, you've absolutely acknowledged that you've got an audience that you want to serve, and you know a lot about them, including what they do. The principle 3 here is unique value-driven content. This is my own IP that I've come to put together that I think will make a huge difference in the content you make. So the first part of this is unique. What we have an epidemic of is not COVID, is copycats, where someone makes a YouTube video or ClickFunnels lead magnet or webinar, and then 100 other people do it, and then it's just like the same. Like, there are content makers out there that I'm pretty sure don't actually have their own thoughts and opinions. They just surf the internet copying other people's things. Now, I can accept that you might see a video and it may inspire you for a video of your own. But if you are someone out there that is looking to model and replicate a very close copy of someone else's content, you are not going to do well in this industry at all and should avoid it. What you really want to do and understand is that being different is actually your key to success here, not being the same. In the last year alone, I have had at least a dozen people come to me and pitch the idea of basically redoing the Joe Rogan podcast. Like, that's their idea, is to create another Joe Rogan podcast, and they can't see why that might not work. Now, funnily enough, they do it for a couple of months and then realize, oh, I get where this won't work, and they've wasted that time. So really, you all on this call have unique values, unique ideas, unique perceptions, unique ways of thinking about, unique ways of doing so many things. I really want to encourage you, when it comes to your content, to lean into the things that make it different, not the same. To steer away from copying other people's successful videos and start to think about your own stuff here. The second thing I want to lean into here is that there's, in my mind, 2 types of content you can make. There is what I call flex content, and then what I call valuable content. Now, flex content is me showing you my abs. Value content is me explaining how I got them. Now, in social media land, it has turned into this game of taking a photo in front of a Lamborghini instead of actually doing the work and showing people how to have a successful business. Flex content has become the means. And I kid you not, I have contemplated buying a Porsche simply to demonstrate it in my content, because that's how much of the world it has been from there. But I'm going to tell you right now, in all the research we've done, and I said, we've looked at so many things with content. We look at, as in a week, 1 million downloads and views. The people who make money make value content, not flex content. Going to the gym and taking photos of yourself may show people a demonstration of what you've achieved. A photo in front of a Lambo might show business success, but ultimately the content makers who make the most money and have the most business success create value-driven content. The content they create provides value. It's how to do the thing. It's a demonstration. It's their diets, not the photos of the abs. It's a really important thing from there. Now, I've created this Venn diagram to really, really help you identify what a piece of value-driven content should be. So number 1, in line with your business. So I have a media business. There is no purpose to me making anything on gardening. I have nothing to sell in gardening. Like, it's not going to actually help me create the result there. So when you're making any piece of content, first check that business alignment. One of the ones that's quite common in fitness, I will say, is people will make stuff on diet. They don't sell anything on diet. They think it's related, but it's kind of not. So if you sell training, make things on training. Like, don't get confused if it isn't an alignment in the perfect way. The second one here is that it solves problems and improves the lives of your audience. So every single piece of content must actually make someone better off. That's where they find that value component to you. And it's a really great way to think about it. And then the third one here is it must be entertaining. I kid you now, if I did this whole presentation in a monotone voice and spoke really boring, none of you would ever actually remember any of it. because there would be no entertainment value. So as content makers, what you're really looking to be is infotaining, where there is an element of enjoyment which comes with your content. I always like to use this example because this is the best one I've ever seen of it. In year 8, I had a really interesting experience with 2 teachers. So one was Mrs. Webb, who was my English teacher, and one was Mr. Sweeney, who was my maths teacher. And you might think, well, you'll trust me, this will make sense here in a second. But Mrs. Webb, what I came to realize was 1 year away from retirement, and she gave 0 fucks. I have never seen a teacher less caring of what was going on and waiting out the clock. So she brought no energy and excitement to her classes. She did nothing to actually engage the students. And as a result, it was just a class you treated as free time. You gave it nothing. You didn't take it seriously. And quite honestly, we would skip that class because we just didn't see the point. Conversely, I had this teacher called Mr. Sweeney, who, I kid you not, this guy would like bring in puppets, right? And we did fractions. He brought in bags of oranges to cut up. It's year 8, you're still grasping these concepts of like, what do you mean something can't be a whole number, right? So he was this really, really interesting guy where he brought in ideas and stories and props. And sure enough, at the end of the year, the difference in these teaching styles presented itself when we all flew through maths, great grades, everyone happy, and I failed English dismally because I'd paid no attention because I didn't realize that. And what you have to realize is in your content, you are those teachers. You are those people that are giving that type of advice, and having an entertainment value to the stuff you do really, really matters. So always, before I release any content, it must align with going over these. All right, actually, I'm going to hold it here real quick. Is everyone, can they understand my Venn diagram here? Can I get some yes or no's in the chat? And thank you, Peak Training. I don't know who that is as a person with a name, but thank you so much for that example. Tash. Okay, Tash, who was Peak. It's nice to meet you, Tash. Hopefully I'll see you soon. I can't see all the faces, but I will at the Q&A, we'll get some people on here. Can you morph flex and value is a quick question that Elise is putting here. Absolutely, but I would only want to, so to this point here, right? And you'll see this today, you wouldn't have to go too far on Instagram to see this, right? If you're going to if you are someone who's really fit, as an example, we're going to make this up, we'll pretend it's me, because let's be real, I'm super fit. Like I'm like the unit on Instagram. If I go into the gym and I take a photo of my abs, right, and I put a step-by-step training program with the abs and say, look, guys, this is exactly what I did to get these abs, you have more flex and value. But more than anything, it is value that demonstrates a result. That's what it is. But if I just take a photo of my abs going, you want to touch this, there's no value in that. There's absolutely none. That is just flex content that is there for my ego. And the danger is these platforms and how we receive feedback on these platforms these days with likes, shares, and comments is we get confused that is a good result, when really what we're all looking for in businesses is probably something further than that. I don't actually know anyone that does content purely to get likes, comments, and shares. I think they enjoy that component over it. Maybe they like the dopamine hit, but really that's not why they do it. So I can't understand why you would want to optimize your whole strategy for that when you're probably thinking about everything else. Entertaining versus Corey. So Rob, really good question. I'll get you to come on with an example later because we're hopefully going to punch through these and we'll come back and do some Q&A and some examples. If you're someone that makes content and you want to understand the dynamics of this stuff within your own brand so we can get you set up in the right direction, I'm for it. Let's do it. I'm sure Dan would love that as well. So we'll go that from there, but I want to cover some more layers because I may answer some of these as we go. So if you've been following along so far and you're going to say like, Charlie, totally, I get this. I'm now going to create unique content. I'm only going to create value stuff and maybe just flex once in a while, but really I acknowledge that's for my ego, not for my business. I might occasionally post an ab shot, but that's fine. You say every bit of value content is going to hit this diagram here. Well, then the natural next question is, well, how do you actually come up with the topics you should make content on then? Like what is a good content topic that fulfills all these things? Now, this I didn't come up with. It was actually taught to me by Rousey from Copyblogger. But I still think this is the absolute best way from here. And I heard it a little bit in your session before about before and after stories and heaven and hell. For every business that's out there right now, and I'll hopefully be able to get my mouse cursor on here, why people pay you is for a transformation, right? There's a state they come to you before, and then there's something they want to be after, right? Every business, you can't name a business that's not true for. Even in a can of Coke, someone is thirsty and wants a sugar hit, and then after they have diabetes. No, I joke. I joke. After they are refreshed with high blood sugar. Still don't mind the occasional can of Coke, but every business has a transformation, and you really need to understand that. So what I love people to do when they're trying to come up with what content they should make is, first off, I want you to look at what someone's life is like before they come to work with you. What does it look like? A day in their life. And then after it, if they've completed the whole journey with you, what does it look like here? So they lost the 10 kilos, might be for some people. They gained the 10 kilos, it could be for others. They're better at marketing their business. They've got more leads. Every business has this. Now, this first component of this exercise, the heaven and hell, is fantastic for understanding your customer, but in a lot of times, I don't think it helps people make great content, where this is the bit which I think really helps people make great content. Once you have your before and after, I encourage people to put it in a spreadsheet and maybe put it in row A and then maybe in row F or something down the line, and give yourself a gap. And then I want you to think about, if you had to teach someone how to go from before and to after, what is everything they need to know so that they could be someone that's on the afterline? Right? What are all the topics that they would need to know to get the result? So if you sat down with your friend, we'll call it a good friend, someone you're patient with, and they said, look, I'm in this situation, which is your before client, and I want to be this after client. Sit down with me and tell me everything I need to know so that I could leave these to get that result. And when you start to think of your content like this, something really, really magical happens, which every piece of content is aligned. Everything you put out in your business stacks into the next piece. Every time someone consumes some of your content, it brings them closer to working you as a business. And this is a really powerful component of creating rock solid content, which will lead people to that sale or lead people to that retention. And I think it's a really different way of thinking about what content to make for a brand or business, which can make a huge difference from there. And I've already put it here, but every piece of content seeks into the next. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Tash, I believe your name is. Great comment. I'll take that from there. Of course, I'll say it's great because it's a compliment to me, but this is so great. Never seen anything like this. Well, Tash, I'm so glad you said that because I eat my own dog food. So in this component that said unique, I make unique. I think it's so important that if you're going to do something as a brand, you better back it up, because otherwise you turn into one of those people and they say, oh, those who can't do teach. No. We don't do that here. We back everything up with what we actually do in this world. So it's really important that we toe that line and help others in itself. But thank you so much for the compliment. I aim to describe, articulate, and bring value from a perception that I think most don't consider. I think there's a lot of people out there that can teach you how to get a lot of Instagram followers, but I've never seen anyone pay their bills with Instagram followers. So I kind of don't waste my time on that. All right. Principle number 4. So if you've gotten to this point from here, and you look at this and you go, right, I've made all this content now. Like I know my niche. I've got my great topics from here. How do I actually get this into a world where it's going to actually bring people to my business? And I've called this principle fish where the fish are, because I think this is the mindset we really need to develop when we're going to market our content. So without doubt, this is the biggest failure point with anyone that's making content these days. I see some people making truly great content, but they're just not putting it in a place where the right people are going to find it. And as a result, they remain the best kept secret of this niche. Have you ever met someone and you go to work with them in a business and you're like, holy shit, this guy is good at what they do. How do more people not know about you? Has anyone experienced that? Just let me know in the chat. Have you come across those individuals? Have you ever felt like one of those individuals yourself? Where it's like, God, I'm putting so much effort into actually doing something awesome and no one knows about me. Or you've worked with someone every day. So you can see why this absolutely has become there. And more than likely, actually undoubtedly, it's because someone at some point led you to believe that spray and pray was the way to approach this. that with your content, if you just put as much crap on every network as possible and post it 4:01 and then 8:59, and then you turn your phone off and turn it back on and view 3 stories, then you run a Facebook ad, like that's the way to get results. That's how you do it. I have seen people, I kid you not, one of my friends, I won't name her, she was convinced that the more stories you watched on your phone, the more people viewed your stories. So she set up a device on here, on her desk, where it would just sit there with her phone on, pressing through people's stories all day long on her phone so that more people would see her story. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this just makes no sense. Like, this is not how I would approach business. Like, that is absolutely the worst way to go about it. And I also am a big believer of this, and I'm not scared to have an opinion. I think trial and error is the most expensive way to run a business. I really do. Like, I don't know, maybe if you've got unlimited funds and unlimited budgets and you can just keep trial and erroring your way to success. But without doubt, I think it makes so much more sense in content to be a little bit more strategic. It really, really does. So what I believe and how I go about this is you want to create the content your audience wants and then put it in a place where they might actually find it. Forget the spray and pray, Gary V, each onto your own. I don't want anything to do with that. I think it's bad advice for most business owners, where I think the ones that want to be truly successful understand that they need to be more like a fisherman. They need to start putting things in a place where it can actually be found. So in principle number 2, we spoke about really understanding your audience and where they are. And like, this is one of the reasons why I think so many people fail, is when I ask this question, they don't know the answer. So they go, what platform should I be on? When the question should be is, well, if this is my audience, what platforms are they already on? Where are they spending their time? And how do I best align with that and get in front of them in that approach? So I'll use some examples here. If you had a fitness business that worked with top level CEOs and you really wanted to target those business owners, I would guess you'd probably want to be on LinkedIn. Actually, I'll guarantee it. If you wanted to target people that are a little bit older, then I would definitely be leaning towards Facebook and Google ads. And that's search ads, because they do search. If you want to target 18 to 21-year-olds, then there's a good chance that you're going to be wanting to spend more time on Instagram and TikTok. But even as subsets of that, bodybuilding, as an example, is somewhere where I would want to be spending more time on YouTube, because they sit on there for hours searching and watching videos. So the whole idea I really want people to work with here is that when you understand your market, it's simply an idea of understanding where they're spending their time and then making sure you get your content on there. So another common question I get with fishing where the fish are is like, well, should I do podcasts? Should I do video? Should I do blogs? Should I do emails? And again, it brings us back to this principle number 2 in looking at, if you understand your audience well, based on the devices they're using and where they're spending their time, what's the most suitable content to make for them? And I really want to do some examples here because there's some you may not expect. I have a fairly large podcast and website in the parenting space. So I actually have an 11-month-old he's Jack. He's very, very cute. And he can only say one word, that is dad. And he says it 4,000 times a day. And it is fucking amazing. It's the greatest thing. It's literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. Just anything. Like, how you doing? Dad, 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 dad. It's brilliant. But anyway, as I was a new parent, I suddenly realized there's all these things that I wanted to know. Like, I'm in this market, I'm a parent now. Now, what I realized is there's some questions and things I'm not really comfortable asking on social media. And I want to give you an example. I wouldn't get on Facebook and type the idea, I just dropped my baby, what should I do? Would anyone, do you think that's, if I'm in that market, right, would that be the type of place to put that type of question and content? Probably not. But sure enough, people search it on Google. I'm actually rather alarmed at how many people are searching it on Google. So if you're in a market that suits a bit of privacy and it's something that people are searching for, well, you definitely want to lean into the channels that suit search. So blogs and YouTube are going to be more up your sphere here. And I think something that's really interesting. The fourth one here is emails. Now, I think this is probably one that I find very generationally split. So if you are in internet marketing, for as an example, as a niche, these guys love email. right? They're absolutely obsessed with email. It is likely you will make most of your sales from emails. So building a list and doing email marketing makes perfect sense for you. If, however, you are in a market of 20-year-olds in fitness, I think Messenger has a bigger role to play here, because I really have noticed and seen in our data that younger people especially don't tend to open their emails regularly, if ever. And it's not actually the way they buy. But if you send them a message, they read it. Like, the open rate on Messenger is absolutely ridiculous in that level, which I think is really, really interesting. If you're in a market where there's already podcasts being created, then it's likely that there's a reason. So maybe a podcast is right for your market, but understanding that and treating this from an audience first perspective and being value driven is the secret here. And really, video falls into that same camp, which I think is really, really cool. So really aligning the type of content you make and the platforms you are to the fish you're looking for, just like the fisherman who's hunting for wild Atlantic salmon goes down to Tasmania and puts his rod in at specific spots with specific bait. You need to think the same as well. And I'm happy to do some examples of this towards the end of it, but I really want to hammer this point home on being specific to the audience. Commonly, another question I get asked is, how much content do I need to make if I'm going to go into this route? I'm going to tell you right now that if you're someone who's looking to have a content presence in the world of today, this is not something you can approach monthly. Making a video a month or a podcast a month or an email a month or anything like that is something you could have probably done 10 years ago. It is not something you can do today. So this is where I would look to things. If you are in short videos, you need to be producing 3 short videos a week. If you're in long form podcasts or long form YouTube videos, you need to be releasing 1 video a week. If you have an email list, you need to email them twice a week. And if social media is a part of your strategy through some of your brands, which it could be for some of you, then you need to be approaching that with almost, I would say, every second day at a minimum and daily on some of the platforms. But trying to do all of that is just insanity when you're not putting your audience first. Now, content lengths will also be in this same category. It's like, how long should my videos be, or how long should my podcast be? And I've had a lot of conversations with different people about this, and this is the point I really want to hammer home here when it comes to contents and volumes, is many people have said that the younger generation can't watch a 2-minute video. And I find that so fascinating, because when I went and saw the Avengers movie, no one walked out. So what I really, really lean into when I look at this is your content can never be too long, only too boring. So if people aren't watching the entirety of your content, it's because your content isn't good enough. And I would also say that if you were going out on a Friday night, does anyone remember these things called movie theaters where you used to go see a movie? I remember them. It's like an ancient time now before lock up in pandemics. But had anyone ever gone out on a Friday night and said, wait, I've got a plan. We'll watch 5 crap movies and that'll be better than seeing 1 good movie? Anyone ever done that? No, me either. So why would you take that approach with your content as well when it comes to length and volumes? I think it's far better for people to be making less better content than it is for people trying to do this daily thing and be everywhere, which is what we see a lot of today. All right, I'm going to go into part 5 here in the 5th principle that we're going, which is measure what matters. And what gets measured gets. Anyone going to complete this in the chat for me? No. Absolutely. What gets measured gets managed. And I really want to emphasize this, because I will bash the hell out of it, because I think a generation has been ruined on content. Followers, likes, shares, and subscribers don't pay the bills. And they're also terrible metrics to track and measure to see if your content is actually performing against your goal. So if I get 1 million followers, but I'm not getting a single sale or lead, it really doesn't count for anything. It really doesn't make a difference in getting me towards those goals. So if you followed principle number 1, you should be very clear on what you actually want to get out of your content when it comes to principle number 5. So I like to look at this in the idea of aligning it to the goal and saying, if my goal was sales, did we get leads and sales? If my goal was reducing churn or keeping clients with us longer, did we have that happen? And if this is something I'm just doing for fun, am I actually having fun? Just as a quick side note and story, I started a fun podcast with my wife on a couples podcast. We're talking about, and we did that for fun, except it just turned into us fighting on topics. So it wasn't really fun. So we stopped that. because I got into my data here and I was like, are we having fun? No, we have an argument after every podcast and then I sleep on the couch. Probably not what I'm going to keep doing here. Really not ticking my boxes, but we got 4 followers. Woo. But you get my point on that one. So where is it here? I'll just mention this one here. When it comes to things, I moved a slide. I'll come back to that one momentarily. When it comes to content, these are the things that I do track quite regularly. And if you are someone who's making content, I would recommend you track these as well. Number 1 is views and downloads. So that is important. If people aren't seeing your content, then undoubtedly you cannot take them to a place of purchase or retention. So views and downloads is really important. Number 2 is that, are we getting traffic to our website? So in my mind, if people are watching our content and then they're clicking a link or moving towards our website, that's where they're actually going to make a purchase. So I do track the traffic that comes to our site itself. Number 3 is I track my email list growth. In my business, it is so important to grow that email list because that is where we make most of our sales. And then number 5, or 4, I should say, really from here, is we track how many sales come from the content we produce. And then based on that, we put together a plan that really just helps us do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And I want to use an example here. I did a video and article more recently about the Joe Rogan podcast deal. And I have never got so much traffic and likes to that video and article in my life. Like, it was very, very topical. Joe Rogan makes 100,000, was it 100 million on the Spotify deal, which is just big industry news in my world. But do you know how many sales I made from that? 0. Not 1. What a waste of time. But conversely, in that same week, I made a whole video on how to work out what is the perfect niche for your podcast and what your first 10 episodes should be. Now, it didn't get half the traffic or even a quarter, but 4 sales. Now, if my goal is to make sales, it just really helped me understand that helpful, value-driven content is what is going to make the difference in my business, not that news-based content. All right, now I'm just going to cover some common questions I get from here, and then I welcome everyone to ask what microphone they should buy and the latest social media hacks on the back of this, because we can go deep on that. So how long does it take to see results? If you're someone that's making content or maybe has never made content, how long does it take? Like, should you get results from day one? And this is what I say to people. In general, your first 3 months of making content is going to be a lot about working out what works and doesn't work. It is unlikely you are going to see phenomenal results in your first 3 months, unless you have a background in content making or some existing leverage. For most people, if they commit to the process of making content and they do it well, at the end of 12 months, it will be the main thing that brings business into your business, or will be a heavy contributor to reducing churn or building your authority. So that's the perspective I would take when it comes to making content. And the simple reason is it takes a while in content for people to warm up with you, for them to know, like, and trust you. But once they do, it is so, so immensely powerful. We use a lot of paid ads. We definitely spend a lot on paid ads, and we love paid ads in general. But the question always gets asked, do I need to do paid ads? No. Bluntly, just no. I would like you to think about, if you're someone who makes content, that ads is something you do if you want to pour a bit of petrol on the fire. It should never be the fire. It is definitely something that can allow you to move faster. And in some markets, it can be really good at helping you get your fishing rod in where the fish are, but it is not essential to being a great content maker. You can definitely do very, very well on organic if you focus on the principles here. The principles I have showed you in this presentation stand to get you far more results than spending money on ads. But if you can combine them both, it is likely you'll be able to go pretty fast. All right. That is my 5 principles. Went a bit longer than I did. It's actually the first time I've delivered this one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. But I will come back and we'll do the Q&A and start going through some examples here, which I'm excited to do with you guys. As long as we've got time, Dan, you may have to boot me.
No, let's do it. It's there's some great questions coming through, so I want to make sure that we get them covered as we go through. So now's your time, guys. You've got Charley. Let's put some of those questions, and we've got to revisit a couple as well. So Josh, your one was, how would I target people in their 60s and late 70s? Because that's who I train. So how do I get in front of these people?
So as a side note, my nan, who's now in her 90s, actually used to do quite a lot of water aerobics in her 80s. She was really into it. And I suspect it played a huge contributing role to her being well. So there's a few things here when I think it comes to content that could be really powerful. One, if you're training people at that age demographic, Google is your number one. Google is absolutely your number one. And I think that is where I would lean into. So that market is very, very helpful. So what do I mean by that? Google ads, like search ads, and then also YouTube ads. I have parent-in-laws, is that what you call them? Parent-in-laws, I'll go with that are in that age bracket, and that's heavily where they are used to doing things. They're not on social platforms in the same way as that. The 40 to 60s is definitely stronger on social media in general. I would go for more Facebook in that demographic itself, but that's who I'd be targeting. And I'll give you one little different strategy that I think could do well here. You can buy video postcards quite cheaply on AliExpress. They're about $2 or $3 each. I would really consider making some good videos or a good long video and dropping that in some local letterboxes if it's for a gym. I think that's particularly useful for some elderly people as well. I think it's very clever. All right, next one in here. Doing reviews. I may or may not be able to do reviews of actual pieces of content, but Elise, if you want to come online and tell me about what you're doing, we can dig into it. If you want to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to.
Hey, sorry, it's Josh.
Hi.
So at the moment we use Jimmy, does our paid ads, smashing through, finding that we're only getting 25, 30% on conversions, and finding people just really don't know who we are when we answer the phone. So we started trying to spread our message more using our coach, who very Tony Robbins-esque, and so are we anyway, and that's our message. So just wondering the best way to leverage that through organic posts. Like, you covered a few things, but yeah, if you saw the personality and type of video, it would probably make more sense.
Okay, so tell me about what's the outcome you achieve with people in your gym? What's the type of programs you do?
To lose weight and create a healthy lifestyle and mindset.
Okay, great. So you're in a few topics there that I think is really important. So if you, any age groups you go after particularly?
Not necessarily, 25 to 50.
Okay, it's very localized, I dare say, like people come to the gym, it's not online or anything like that. Okay, so this is the one I would do from here is, first off, 25 to 50 is too broad. If you've been working with Jimmy already, I would get him to select which demographics is performing best with the ads already.
Yeah.
Now, the maximum I would put in a demographic is 10 years. Because once you spawn longer than that, I find it very, very hard to communicate effectively. And the reality is, if you look at a 25-year-old girl versus a 35-year-old girl, what's going on, and men as well, I won't make this to one side, but the things that are going on in their life are just very, very different. You can't talk to that person in the same way. And I'll give you the example is that a 25-year-old is probably fresh out of uni and has a very, very different perspective than the 35-year-old that's perhaps just dropped a kid off at daycare and trying to navigate being a mum. So her values and family and just home, all these different things are very, very different. So to my point, principle 2 is the one you probably need to focus on first, is nailing an absolute one specific audience and then making specific content for them. And following that process will yield you some good results. If you haven't had much of success with your content so far, and I have your page up here, I just don't want to play anything in case it loops through on my setup. But if you haven't been seeing great results with your content on there, it is likely that you're trying to please too many people. It's too broad and you're not cutting through enough to anyone. One other thing is if you are going to go after Facebook and that's the right thing for you, I would encourage posting on personal pages, not just business pages. The personal pages get a much, much better view from there. So that's how I would approach that one. And then I'd go through that exercise I made, the heaven and hell and the topics, and just make it really specific to that person. And I suspect you'll never, ever run out of videos you can make.
Cool. Thank you. Perfect.
Welcome. Did anyone else have any questions? There's a few that may have come up here, so I'll look at that. Tracy Welsh, what are video postcards? Am I the only dinosaur? No, definitely not. So video postcards, it's actually a newer technology, which is really good. It's like a birthday card, but it's got a little screen in it and you can put videos on them. So when they open, it plays the video. Now, why I like these is that if you're in a localized market, they absolutely stand out. People actually consume them. One of the companies that does them a lot in my area is actually like Vanguard and the wealth management ones, because they want you to buy their funds, but they're actually quite cheap on AliExpress and can be a really interesting way of delivering content differently, which I think can be very, very cool in markets that don't use devices. The Hoff, I missed the first two principles. Can I see those slides? I'll give this whole slide deck to Dan, and you guys can do as you please with it. It's I hope you will use it for good and not evil. I'm scrolling through on some of these here. If anyone, AliExpress is just a little website for delivery where you can get things sent to you quite easily from there. All right, so we're at the bottom of the list here. Did anyone else have any questions, or did anyone braven to come on and talk about their brand, and we could possibly align them with some of this stuff?
Charlie, I have a question. Steve from Melbourne.
Hi, Steve. Now, there's a lot of faces. I can't actually pinpoint which one you are. Could you wave your hand, please? I literally can't see Steve, but nonetheless, we'll continue. Oh, yeah, I found you. Excellent. How you doing?
All right. Thank you. Recently, in the last month, I have seen quite a few videos come up by some well-known video makers, influencers, and so forth, such as Sean Naylor, Lane Norton, which sounds is synonymous. But what they've done is that they tend to critique, and I'll say strip down, what other influencers' videos are, such as Thomas DeLauer and Vince Fred and so forth. And I can only see this as being extremely detrimental to their following. Do you agree? Can this actually be very harmful if you strip down somebody else's words?
It can be dangerous. It can be very, very dangerous to a point there. I'll just mention a few things that I can think are really helpful. If you're in a business where you want to be seen as an expert, one of the most powerful things you can do is either answer questions or do critiques, because they're two forms of presentation that put you in the position of an expert. So if people are asking me questions and I'm giving answers to those questions, if other people have got similar questions, well, you become the natural solution. So if you're someone out there looking for something you can do once a week, that's a really easy piece of content to create. A Q&A episode, I think, is just phenomenally a really good one. To your point, though, we are in this era where you don't have to look far on YouTube, where people will actually review other people's videos or content and actually break it down or do teardowns or talk about why they're right or wrong. Ultimately, I would aim not to get distracted by that. I don't think it's actually good as a strategy for someone to do themselves. And really, no one buys from someone else because they're involved in drama. And I really want to emphasize this is like drama is not a reason people buy. The reason why people buy or engage in a brand is because you can help them solve a specific problem. One of the things I will say, though, is that I think debates can be really good as well. So if you're a podcaster and you want to debate someone that has a different view to yours, that's a really great piece of content as well, and helping someone understand why they might work with you or align close to that brand. Helpful, not helpful? Go with thumbs up. We'll take it as helpful.
You're getting a few questions now come in, Charlie. So you've now started the avalanche.
Let's do it.
So strap yourself in. Ellen asks, is it beneficial to direct your audience to a community group in which you deliver content, or better to post publicly?
It's a really good question. I tell you what, if there was ever like a little bit of a loaded question, I think this one might get it. So I'll go through this. Now, guys, I have been online long enough that I have deep regrets of not absolutely obliterating every credit card I've ever owned on one certain clicks on AdWords. The opportunity was there and I never saw it. And just as that point, when I first started doing Facebook ads, they were like 1 and 2 cents a click. It was crazy. It was this era and things have changed. And the reason I say that is like once upon a time, posting things on Facebook on your page or in a group, everyone used to see it. Used to be a very, very viable strategy. Now, Facebook in general as a platform, I'm very much of the view, and this is my opinion in its current form. If you are someone who is making content or doing things on Facebook, your number one goal is to get them off Facebook, to either build an email list, a messenger list, a website following, but I would not encourage anyone to build their audience into Facebook itself. Now, if you're someone that's been doing that, that may be something you need to change, but Facebook has very much just said it's a pay-to-play platform. So for a lot of people, if you're wanting to get the result on Facebook, it is likely you will endeavor down an ads path, and then your goal should be to move them into things you own, like a messenger list, a email list, website following in itself. Google Groups is still something you don't own. And I'll go a little bit on the other side. What tends to happen, guys, right? And I wonder if you've seen this trend. Has anyone ever heard this saying before, is have them over for lunch and then eat them for dinner? Has anyone ever heard that? Just humor me here if anyone's ever seen this, and we'll just use the social media platforms as an example here. So what they do, right, is they get you to use the platform in the beginning. They say, hey, you come on Facebook, you post your stuff, people will see it. Right? You get on and the masses come on, and then slowly over time, that reach decays. Then you have to start paying for that reach, and then we enter an era where we basically get no reach. And then the next platform comes along and says, we'll give you tons of free views, come and use our platform. And then everyone jumps onto the next platform, which is what we're seeing with TikTok right now. So TikTok and YouTube are the ones that are giving away a lot of free views at the moment. If you have a YouTube channel or your audience is on the platform suitable for that, you are likely to build a really good following organically. But I would just very much caution you to building your business into one of these platforms. And the reason I say that is they have shareholders. Their job is to make money, not to make you your business and give you free leads and traffic. As a content maker, your role and responsibility is to use these platforms, but never rely on them. They work for you. You don't work for them. And that's something I would really encourage from there. So build your own stuff.
That's superb, Charlie. There's still more coming through, so we'll just grab a couple more, and then I know we should let you go and enjoy the rest of your weekend. But Tash, how do I target disability? I'm in a network with many organizations and in groups. Any other suggestions?
Great niche, by the way. I think it's fantastic that you've got a niche that works with that type of market. Now, I would very much say that is probably one of the harder ones to target on, let's say something like Facebook ads. That is one where I would very much be looking towards either YouTube or Google, where people with those, I'll just quickly go over something here that I didn't include in the presentation, but is important to understand. In content, we have two markets, right? So we have distraction markets and intent markets. And what I want you to imagine is that when someone's scrolling through their Facebook feed, they're not particularly searching for anything. Right? You're a distraction because they opened that up because they want to be distracted. And your goal is to distract them. Right? And that it worked very, very well, and I'm not against it. So in certain markets where you can't target people based on their search intent, that's how these platforms win. But in others, particularly Google, Pinterest, and YouTube, to engage in the platform well, you actually have to search. Like people come into things with intent. So if someone wrote disability workout, as I'll make up, into Google or into YouTube, that's someone that is very likely either in your market or cares for someone in your market, and getting in front of them would be very, very advantageous there. So to follow the principle of like fish where the fish are, that's where the fish would be fishing. So I'd very much lean into that.
Yeah. Just a quick question.
Shoot.
On that, I've actually got a number of people, groups that I'm in, and I've actually got a lot of people requesting me and asking me to be mascots, and the media has actually contacted me in regards to what I do. So it's not actually a problem with that. It's more of now, because I have so many requests, I'm trying to work out how I can do this with all these people. Is a group sort of speaking. I'm looking more at that way of going things in this area, and sort of, because obviously disability training and strength training and injury, because I'm a lifestyle coach as well. So I'm thinking that I'm trying to debate whether to go into the group side of it rather than individual one-on-one. It's getting, I'm getting a lot of referrals.
So that's probably more in a business delivery area that I probably am not the best one to answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay, that might be something for Dan. So I've been trying to catch up with these guys, but yeah, I'll speak with them guys about it. But yeah, so basically most of it's Facebook and referrals and Google. So, but my actual Google site's down at the moment. So yeah, I'll thank you. But I've got a lot out of your talk today. It's absolutely brilliant. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks heaps. Thank you.
Very kind of you to say, and huge appreciation for those of you that have left a nice comment or said something nice.
No, it's brilliant. Really good. Thank you.
One last one, Charlie, before we let you go and enjoy that weekend with you, your son. Love that his only word is dad. Ellen asked, where would you suggest to learn how to utilize messenger lists? So talking about kind of owning some traffic, where can she learn the ins and outs of that?
Okay, so I'll speak from what we see working for clients, okay, right now. So overwhelmingly, ManyChat is the platform of choice. So every client we work with that does Messenger as a part of it, ManyChat is the platform they use. Now, as a part of that, ManyChat actually have an academy and their training is really good. We put our team through it to start to understand that as well. So a lot of these platforms will provide that type of stuff. One of the things I really like is that for many of these platforms like ManyChat is they actually allow you to export that list as well. It's not tied to their platform. So it's a really, really clever way. It's almost like an email broadcast tool like ActiveCampaign or MailChimp, but for Messenger, which I think is really cool.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. I'm going to stop it there just because I know we could probably do this all day. We'll probably have to get you on again, mate, because you've just triggered that many great thoughts and questions and everything else. Look, I'm going to speak on behalf of the group. That was absolutely superb, mate. That was phenomenal. Very, very practical, incredibly informative, and a lot for us to take away. So, mate, thank you so much for giving up part of your Saturday. Thank you for just a phenomenal delivery. And I'm just absolutely blown away by you, mate, and the value of that presentation. So thank you very much. And everybody else, let's show our appreciation to Charlie.
Thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure.